Dr. Tony, I became acquainted with Protean through Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky and I were conversing and back and forth on LinkedIn. And so eventually it had to end up in the two of us meeting each other.
Sure.
And Rocky shared with me your background and what Protean was doing, and I immediately became a fan.
Oh, thank you.
And what you're doing reminds me very much of one of my favorite quotes, which comes from the Roman philosopher. He was actually North African, but Roman. Philosopher Terence, from his book. It was actually a play called The Self-Torturer.
Oh.
And don't read too much into that title. But the quote was, "I am a man and nothing human is of indifference to me." Very, very, there's a lot of content there,
Right.
In that I'm a human being, but everything that is related to human beings is very important to me. And that's what I thought of when I saw the compendium of what you have done, what you and the team had done. Now, there are many ways to make money in this world,
right?
And there are probably easier ways than doing what you've done to make money.
Yes.
But that would speak to your story and what you have done, and why you're doing it. And rather than for me to put words in your mouth, maybe you could tell me a little bit about your trajectory, your journey.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know where to begin, but maybe it was when I was a kid that I became really interested in both science and medicine when I was growing up. So I had the fortune of growing up in Northern Ireland, and Northern Ireland,
wow.
Yes, in a place called Newton Ards in Northern Ireland. So I lived there during the 70s, it's like Dairy Girls period. So I lived there between 70 and 74 when the Troubles were happening. So I would spend quite a bit of time with my grandmother at her farm, or her cottage that was in a place called Monaghan, where I happened to be born. And this is a fairly isolated part of Ireland. It was in the rural. There were cows and pigs there. We didn't have a television. We didn't even have running water, but I loved it. And I spent the summer there. So there wasn't much to do. So I'd run around with the animals, but there was a collection of old books that she had, and some of them were medical books. So there were medical books from First World War about surgery, and there's books on human anatomy and all of these things. So I read them all, and I found it really quite interesting about how the body worked and about medicine and so on. And I actually fell in love with science first before medicine, and I just loved learning about things, about the moon and about biology and about all these things. And I was really disappointed because when I went to school there, they had no science class. There's no science class in Northern Ireland. So the only way I could learn about science was going to the library and to try to take out books. And the librarian said, "You're too young to read these kinds of books." And I had to get my grandmother to sign out the books on things like astronomy or on beetles or on all different things. So that's where I sort of got my love for science and for sort of for medicine at that period of time. And it wasn't until I came to Canada when I went to a school that actually had science. And it's like, wow, they've got science, they got microscopes, they got all this stuff. And I really enjoyed biology and chemistry and physics and even statistics and so on. So that led my foundation. But I was always first and foremost a scientist, but I felt science was only useful if you could make a difference with it by using it to try to make a difference in people. And I became interested that medicine was an opportunity to put sort of humanity and science together. And also it was limitless, because I found that if I was going to become a scientist, I'd have to pick one thing and stick with that for the rest of my life. Whereas if I became a doctor, I could almost do anything and learn different things and see how to put things together. So that drove me into medicine.
The common thread there seems to be a love of what you were doing.
Yes.
I remember a moment ago when you and I were sharing coffee.
Yes.
We were talking about how you can tell if something was prepared, like if a meal was prepared with love.
Yes.
Or surprisingly, how this coffee, which came out of a Keurig, was so good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so quality is essential to everything. So even the small things like how do you make a cup of coffee, or in a lab, lab, how do you make a lab test? All of those things are essential. And can we make it better? Can we make it efficient? Can we scale it? So those are all important things.
Now, when I was talking with Rocky back then, and Rocky was kind enough to share with me information about Protean,
Yes.
I have this inherent desire, basically, at anything I look at,
Right.
to try to fit it into, metaphorically speaking, a nuclear centrifuge,
Yes.
and spin it at ultra high velocity,
Right,
and to
right.
see what even though this is not how plutonium or yellow cake is produced, keep the image,
Sure.
to spin it at ultra high velocity, and to see what the plutonium of that information would be.
Sure.
Now, when I thought of Protean, I thought what came to my mind, being a military guy,
Right.
spent most of my adult life in the military, what came to my mind was something called the OODA loop.
Oh.
Rocky knows about the OODA loop. It was developed by a Vietnam-era Air Force ace, Colonel John Boyd. OODA, OODA, observe, orient, decide, act.
Okay.
Because in his world, in the skies over North Vietnam, the decision-making cycle had to be very short.
Right.
Had to be very short because it doesn't even require explanation.
Right.
In a dogfight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, my takeaway, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that on what you're producing here, Oncology Maps,
Yes.
basically has taken what has been done in different geographies, different labs, and created from it a system which significantly reduces the decision-making time, and as a consequence, allows one to serve the patient in a much shorter time frame, because it takes the entire discovery process to decision to a critical mass, where it could be done in a much more efficient time. Am I basically summarizing that correctly? And maybe you could tell us more about it.
Sure, you're exactly right about that. And one of the gaps in current medicine are two things. So one is that the amount of information that we have available is growing exponentially, and there are new tools becoming available almost on a daily basis. And this puts a doctor at a really difficult position in terms of how do they keep up, how do they be a better doctor. And a doctor really is, they need to have the information at their fingertips, much like a fighter pilot needs to know where's the plane and speed and all that. A doctor needs to know critical information about their patient to be able to make the right decision. So if the information is outdated or their tools are old, or they can't make the right decision for the patient. So this became obvious to me over my career, that the amount of information was getting faster and faster, and the tools that I had as a doctor were not keeping up or allowing me to be able to make decisions in a more effective way. So the whole idea was to create Protean and Maps to be able to deliver to a decision-making doctor the information they need to make a better decision and to make it faster. And also to bring a new technology, because one of the barriers in diagnostic technology, it can take up to 15 years for something to run from a university lab to come into common practice. So we've shrunk that down. We can take a product and put it into production within 2 to 3 months.
15 years to
Yes,
2 months.
Exactly. So that way we can bring innovative technologies, and instead of going through an entirely convoluted process, we can make them available immediately to our patients and to our care providers in the MAP system. So that's what the MAP system does. It integrates the data for the patient, it brings in new technologies, and then it delivers it to a doctor in a way they can actually utilize immediately to make decisions about the care of the patient as quickly as possible. And we think we can change medicine with a system like this.
Yeah. What you're doing, well, let me put it this way. Let's say, for example, that my wife is Brazilian, your wife is Korean, Rocky's wife is also Brazilian, right? Cooking is a very important part of our wives' culture, culturally speaking, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if someone came to my wife, someone came to your wife, someone came to Rocky's wife and said, you know what? You make great cookies.
Right.
You could make a business out of this.
Yes.
But however, what's lost in the conversation is there's quite a bit of difference between mom's cookies and Momco.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Now, your background as a professor is such that it's often associated with something very theoretical,
Yes.
but not necessarily practical.
Right.
However, Protean and what you've done demonstrate, in my mind, a fusion of what you know as a doctor
Yes.
with very, very good business acumen.
Yes.
Right? Especially in how you've been able to scale.
Right.
And your associations with different companies. I'm trying to remember the name. I think one was Arima.
Yes.
And the other one I think was Spesma.
Okay.
If I'm a little bit off
Sure.
on the pronunciations, please forgive me.
Right.
So now this is not an easy thing to do. To be, on the other hand, focused on the medicine, and on the other hand, focused on business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So
Because otherwise, it's just nothing but a good idea.
No, exactly. So in some ways, medicine is a business. So even if you're a family care doctor, you have to run a business. So you're seeing patients, you need a nurse, you need an office, and you need space, and you have to manage data. I went into pathology. Pathology is actually quite a complex operation within a hospital. So hospital labs are very large enterprises, and I had the privilege of working at Moffitt Cancer Center, where I was chair of pathology, and their labs take care of over 75,000 patients a year. They do hundreds of millions of dollars worth of testing work and so on. So it's quite a large business enterprise, and it has to be run as a business. So in terms of efficiency, teams, staff, machines, and all of that. So in many ways, pathologists are doctors, but pathologists that run labs are almost like executive officers, because they have to create a team, a staff, and integrate all of this. And then they have a clientele to serve. So they got to take care of the patients, but also the doctors and the health systems and the administrators and so on. So I was sort of steeped with that as I went through my career. I started small labs. So I created a lab in Calgary from scratch and grew it into one of the largest diagnostic labs in Canada, providing breast cancer testing and so on. So like I said at the beginning, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one thing. I like doing lots of things. So I had the opportunity to do all kinds of things, the ability to do research, science, teach, run a lab, grow a lab business in Canada, work with pharma companies and understand how they work with diagnostic companies, and come to the United States 2011, really learn about the American medical system, and saw a huge unmet need. Said, I see this unmet need to integrate data, to be able to accelerate new technologies and be able to help doctors get the information to better treat patients. And that was the vision for Protean, the vision for MAPS. And I was fortunate to be in a position where I could bring it into reality. And it's been a really exciting journey since beginning that.
Now, stemming from what we were, the combination
Yes.
of the science and the business,
Right.
the results have been phenomenal. They've been asymmetric. What it makes me think of is the old Latin expression "res ipsa loquitur."
Oh.
The thing speaks for itself.
Yes.
Now, I think this is where, especially Rocky, would be useful and would be instrumental in our conversation as well too, because now we're speaking of the team as well.
Right.
So, how was it that you were able to? I would assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that anything related to medical research, the medical industry, might have very high startup costs. How were you able to get this thing running so quickly and running so successfully?
Right. Well. Thank you for that. So one of the things that in any business, it needs to have revenue. So when I started Protean, we had immediate revenue opportunities. So we saw that I knew there was unmet needs in pharma and research, where people needed access to data, they needed access to specimens, and they needed access to testing. So I was able to assemble a company that was able to start producing needed services from day one. I was able to start generating revenue from day one, and we were very much able to bootstrap the company, saying, let's start with the unmet needs, with pharma and so on. But there was an overall picture of, puzzle pieces. So here's a piece goes here, goes there, and so on to build the overall enterprise. But I approach business from an old school point of view because I grew up in a merchant family. So my ancestors in Ireland and Italy ran ice cream factories and restaurants, and I grew up in my dad's restaurant and shops and so on. And I knew we had to make a profit at the end of the day. We had to be able to take care of both our patients, the customers, the staff, and so on. So that was instilled from me from the beginning. Did you have some comments for Rocky? Or
I think so too. I think it's critical also that you had the foresight to bring on Rocky onto the team, especially with his background in working in electoral campaigns. I would assume that would. I'm trying to think of the way to express this in the best terms. I think that you had the foresight to see a connection between what his skill sets, what you've been doing, Rocky, and their relationship in terms of what you're doing. In terms of placing a face to all of this. In terms of marketing it. There was maybe somewhat of even a relationship between the two, between how a political campaign would be run and how Protean's campaign would run.
Sure. So I could start actually at the beginning, because one of the hardest things in business is to make change. And so making changing pattern is one of the hardest things that you can do. But that's a factor of education and connection and trust. And medicine is based on trust almost more than anything else, because people's lives are at stake. Doctors' reputations are at stake. It's a very high risk business, and so you have to be able to communicate, to network, to educate, and to build trust. And I think in a political campaign, some of those things are part intrinsic to that as well. So maybe Rocky found us, said, hey, he thinks he could help us. So tell us about your story, Rocky.
Even more interesting. So you found them. You found Protean.
Yes, I met Dr. Tony one evening. I was working for State Rep Fred Hawkins at the time, and Dr. Tony had sent out an email to the State Office of Representative Hawkins, and he said he was working with artificial intelligence in the area of cancer diagnostics. And I don't even recall. This is maybe almost 3 years ago. I don't even recall at the time if I knew what AI really was. I mean, I'd heard the term, but then to hear it coupled with cancer diagnostics or discovery sounded absolutely fascinating. So we met shortly thereafter, and I knew after a few hours with Dr. Tony, I'm very much a mission-oriented individual. I'm not capital driven. I do not make works. The work I do is not necessarily for capital money or reward. There may be benefits out there, and I do perceive tremendous upside with Protean, but that is not my primary mission. So what I saw and what I think the Lord led me to see in Dr. Tony is, here's a campaign. Not only are we, in traditional political campaigns, you're trying to win hearts and minds in order to win a race for a temporal, finite period of time. And I almost had like a John Scully moment when Steve Jobs and John Scully met in the 80s, and Steve Jobs finally said to John Scully, do you want to continue making soda water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with Apple and help change the world? And Dr. Tony probably wasn't expecting this, but a week later, my resume was on his desk. It was.
You found each other.
We found each other, and I didn't. And could I address the OODA loop 1 second?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Boss Don, you brought up an critical element of one of, there's a couple secret sauces at Protean. One of them is Dr. Tony's OODA loop that he runs on. Most business enterprises are seeking to gain an immediate and rapid ROI, return on capital, wealth creation.
Especially if they're public,
Right.
to show their investors, the shareholders.
And I think that's great because that leads to product discovery, and I'm not being negative. But the Protean OODA loop, because of Dr. Tony's vision and mission, because his heart is absolutely patient-centric, his orientation segment has shifted his OODA loop to what's called left of bang. This is a military concept which is actually giving Protean more time to observe. So what Protean is able to do, most businesses, especially if they're large, they have a very compressed OODA loop because they're caught in a cycle of cutthroat competition. Dr. Tony's goal is not wealth. Now, I do predict he will be extremely, extremely wealthy one day, not because of design, but of effect. It will only be because I do see Protean one day, the name being as ubiquitous as Google or the Band-Aid, because what he is doing, his OODA loop is putting much more time in the observance phase of the sequence. Protean by nature is collaborative. It's almost like a cell in that it's got a permeable wall. He's virtually open source with the exception of some IP for structural integrity. So in other words, Protean is operating with more processing power, and it's enabling Protean to bring more relevant, timely, affordable, accurate products to market, and it allows Protean to develop above the fray. And what this is, a venture capitalist once asked us, what is your market strategy? And I wasn't rude, and I didn't tell him what my market strategy was, but I will tell you here, and I've posted it on LinkedIn before, and here's my quote that I think I came up with, unless someone can correct me. In the Protean world, instead of going to the market, become the market. And Dr. Tony, this, if you don't mind, boss, Don, this leads to a perfect question for Dr. Tony, in that because he's got more time for consideration of historical data and cause and effect in the field of medicine, Protean deployed Protean brain cancer maps this year. Tell us about that, Dr. Tony, and the impact, and how, and tell me if I'm not wrong, you had people lined up. How much money did you spend on marketing for that product, Dr. Tony?
Zero. Yes.
Recipe's a loquitur. The thing speaks for itself, right?
That's right. Yeah, the Protean brain maps is a great example of a product that we developed. And it was actually over 20 years we developed this product, in the sense that through my research career, I built networks with scientists really around the country and around the world. And over the years, I saw that there was this transformation coming to how we classify disease, and it's called epigenetics. And so genetics are the genes and the sequence of the genes, but what distinguishes your liver from your brain is what genes are turned on and turned off. So every gene's got an on-off switch in it, and so basically they're switched on and switched off, and that's epigenetics. And so if you're able to read the epigenetics, you could tell whether a tissue is a brain tissue or a liver tissue or how old it is or actually what kind of tumor it is. So I was always quite intrigued with this, and this became, an area of research about 25 years ago. And one of my colleagues was working at NIH, and he spent decades studying this thing, and they analyzed hundreds of thousands of samples and taught AI and machine language how to read all of these switches. And so they could then take an unknown brain tumor, analyze the pattern using advanced technology from Illumina, and make an exact diagnosis very quickly and at very low cost. So they were able to patent that, put it into market, and then they actually contacted me and said, would you be interested in collaborating? We think that this product should go into commercialization. We trust you because we've known you for years. We want to collaborate with you and keep collecting the data and so on. And I said, yes, I'm happy to work with you. We spent 2 years transferring the product from NIH into Protean. Protean's the only commercial lab in the country that now has this particular product. And when we went live, we had over a dozen medical centers say we want to use that product. And so we're running multiple cases a week now with that, and we're improving the accuracy of brain cancer diagnosis for adults and for children. So we have some very large brain cancer centers that work on kids, send us really, really tiny amounts of tissue that's very hard for a human pathologist to make a diagnosis. We can diagnose that accurately, make sure that child gets the right treatment. And you'll actually see on the path report saying, small brain tumor, send to Protean for diagnosis, wait for result. We do that once a week. They get the results back in 3 or 4 days. They can start taking action on the kids.
If I understand correctly, the data was always out there.
Yes.
It's just that previously it was being almost done, so to speak, by hand.
Yes.
Whereas your technology has taken statistical noise and has been able to, like a prospector looking for gold, sift through it much more quickly so that it could be, you could separate what was relevant. We were speaking of the plutonium very quickly. To the complete benefit of the patient.
Yes. Yeah, and you've really narrowed it down. So what Protean has attempted to do, so I worked in academic medical centers for all my life, and I saw they all had really incredible things, but they were separate, that Mayo could do this, and Moffitt could do this, and NIH could do this, and someone else could do that. How do we distill the essence down? So we bring the essence down, bring it in one place, and then make it available to everybody immediately. So that's what we've done. We said, how do we take that incredible product, put it into a place like Protean, get it working, and then make it available to any patient in America today? And that's what we're trying to do, to break down all of the walls, make it available. And we're doing that through telemedicine, through AI, through scaling, through education, all those things. We want to reduce that product cycle from 15 years down to a month or two, and to have one place where doctors and patients can go to get everything. And as Rocky pointed out, I don't compete with people, I collaborate with people. So we license that technology, they benefit from it. We find another lab, say, wow, they got a great technology, let's partner with them. We want to get their technology onto Protean maps. We were just talking, we're doing some work with firefighters. They get a lot of cancer because of exposures to certain chemicals in the environment. We found another lab that could measure how much toxicity they had in their body from a drop of blood. I said, I want that in Protean. We made a deal and say, hey, we can bring that into Protean, make that available to our clients. So almost on a weekly basis, I find new technologies. We make a partnership deal, bring it into Protean. The Protean Maps product gets stronger and stronger. They have a way to deploy their technology. We gather the data and keep learning. So it's a virtuous cycle. We keep growing and growing and learning and learning. We become a nexus of information and nexus of technology.
With this system and with this information, with these developments, we were able to capture far, far in advance the possibility of cancer.
Absolutely.
Not even just that cancer has appeared, but the possibility of cancer, thereby saving an inestimable number of lives.
Absolutely.
Being a former again, spent most of my adult life in the military. I was a logistics expert.
Sure.
And we would apply metrics to almost everything.
Right.
I don't know if metrics could even begin to describe the amount of lives and pain that's being lives being saved, pain being reduced.
Right.
Pain not only to include that of the patient, but of course the patient's loved ones.
Absolutely. And also the system and society, the cancer burden is an incredible cost on the nation and the world. And actually the cancer journey, I learned this as a scientist and as a professor, it's actually a journey that begins right at birth, even before birth, when you choose your parents and the DNA is combined to create you as a single cell. All of that information is packed into that first cell, and it grows into an organism that becomes the wonderful you that you are. And even if you're an identical twin, the twin is not identical because all kinds of stuff happens during development and epigenetics, and so they are different as well. So all of that programming will tell you how tall you're going to be, but also whether you're at risk of cancer or other diseases and so on. And we can learn that journey. So some people are destined based on their genes, but others, there's an environmental interaction so that if you're exposed to certain toxicities and other things as well. So we can actually manage a patient through the journey. That's why we call the product MAPS, because it's guidance. It's guidance about what to do next. Because what a doctor really needs to know is, what do I do next for this patient? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I just have to reassure this patient or wait for a year or do something. Maybe I have to take immediate action. Maybe I have to do an X-ray or something else. So our product is designed to inform the doctor what to do next. Where is the patient on the journey? Are they at beginning point? Are they showing risk factors? Could we interfere with the disease? And the fact is about cancer, it starts as one cell. So we could either prevent that cancer, like for example, in cervical cancer, a vaccine can stop the virus that can trigger the cancer, or we can detect that cancer when it's in an early stage and we can remove it before it's had the chance to spread around the body and basically cure a patient with a very, very low cost procedure. Whereas if that cancer had spread, it would be a $200,000 to $1 million procedure to try to treat that
Absolutely
patient.
incredible.
Yes.
See, what a lot of success gurus have told us, they've spoken about the virtues of failure, and I understand what they're trying to say.
Sure.
But the issue is they're working with a hammer, or maybe a sledgehammer.
Right.
What you and the team and Protean are doing, you're saying, why even deal with that?
Yes.
What I can do using my system is an extremely advanced form of due diligence, human due diligence, health due diligence, by saying we might not even have to make a mistake to improve that from that mistake.
Yes.
We can tell you from the time of birth.
Yes.
We can tell if a female, and I say female because we're talking even about a baby before they achieve womanhood, adulthood.
Yes.
Whether she is prone statistically toward having cervical cancer or not.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That there may be a predisposition,
and then we can act accordingly.
Exactly, and so on. So the information that you're born with gives a certain baseline as to your risks, and then the environment does other things, and then there's sort of random things that happen. But that's your, in some ways, your destiny. But that can be adjusted. So it's easier to adjust, a ship by making a small adjustment miles out than when you're close and say, wow, we have to make a massive adjustment. The amount of energy is quite different. So being able to maintain health, being able to maintain wellness and detect disease at a very early treatable stage or preventable stage changes everything. And that's one of the goals that we're trying to do. How can we really affect that change? And one of the problems with the medical system, a lot of it is it's an illness system. So they're really waiting for critical illnesses and trying to correct that. If we're able to back that up and say, hey, we can detect it earlier, or we can improve the diagnosis, because it might shock you to know, the error rate in diagnosis is as high as 30%. We had talked earlier that one of the third commonest causes of death in America is medical errors due to delayed diagnosis, toxic interactions with medicines, and so on. And these are all correctable. And when I was working in some of the large academic medical systems, it's like, why can't we fix this? So some ways it's a connection problem and a data problem, because we actually have great medicines and great diagnostics. We have to put them together to make them available. And kind of that's what Protean is doing. The map system puts the best of the best together, makes it available, makes it accessible, reduces the cost, and distributes it. So that's our goal.
Let me ask you this, both
Sure.
of you. From a human level, for example, the doctor treats the patient.
Yes.
Or let's say that even more, the doctor treats the patient, or let's say the patient's children.
Yes.
And the doctor is able to experience firsthand the appreciation, the gratitude from the patient.
Yes.
What your team is doing is absolutely wonderful, but is it so far removed from the patient that these happy stories are not filtering back to you, or do you get happy stories of people being helped, assisted, aided, saved?
Sure. Rocky might comment on some of that.
Boss Don Carlos, you just hit a home run. You didn't realize it, and it's the story. You mentioned stories, and stories are everything to humanity. Our existence is deep within our psyche, and this is the story that literally brought me to Protean. It's the story that wakes me up. It's the story I think about when I go to bed. Long story short, one day Dr. Tony gets a call from a mother in Australia. People find Dr. Tony, and because he is so open about his lectures and theories and applications in fighting cancer, she finds Dr. Tony. Unfortunately, this mother who is must be just an incredible person. She informs Dr. Tony that her son has a very aggressive, horrible cancer. He's only, I think, 17. And he's actually in hospice.
In hospice at 17 years.
Care, in hospice care at 17 years of age. And she goes, but then Dr. Tony said, one of the things about Dr. Tony is, and this is why I can testify that I've seen groups of 10 and 12 people fill this exact table from Switzerland. I won't name their names. They know who they are. Big companies come to Dr. Tony when they have problems and challenges. Just like this mother was coming to Dr. Tony with a very serious problem. Dr. Tony is always asking questions. And so he immediately started probing into this particular case. And then he immediately told, after a moment, he told this fighting mom who wasn't going to accept this imminent death verdict on her son. Dr. Tony says, I think we should explore I think Protean can help you explore some alternatives. Well, it just so happens that on the young man's bucket list is a trip to Disneyland in California. So Dr. Tony is a strategic thinker. And you know what that means? If the boy sets foot, this is back during the emergence of COVID, if the boy sets foot in the domestic United States, that gives the opportunity to gain test data for Dr. Tony and the Protean map system. Dr. Tony and Protean go to work on the boy's medical history, a comprehensive overview of every visit, analysis, etc. Dr. Tony and team with Protean Maps discover not only do they absolutely identify this cancer to the cell. While that's happening, simultaneously, Protean's AI robots create a linkage. This is where the miracle part comes in, Boss Don. There just so happens to be a company in France looking for that type of tumor to conduct a research trial, experimental research trial. Dr. Tony obviously rapidly connects the company in France with the fighting mom and her son coming in hospice, coming to this French company developing a potential therapeutic. Protean goes about its daily existence fighting against cancer pathology. A couple years later, Dr. Tony gets a phone call from this mother. He has not received any information about this case. So as a doctor, and I'm sure there's many doctors out there, you can realize, or police officers, people that are, used to dealing with negative information, I'm sure Dr. Tony prepared himself to either extend condolences or say, well, thank you for fighting for your son. Well, somehow the mother just says to Dr. Tony, oh, no, Dr. Tony, my son's in college. He's playing rugby, and he's been in remission for 6 months. So this is the story. This is our mantra. The idea that, and this is also to encourage everyone here, every mother and father out there who's going to fight like hell when a family member, when their parents or their kids get cancer. Question, investigate. This is the Protean process. This is the worldview and vision of Dr. Tony Magliocco. So thank you for the opportunity to share that story. But Boss Don, it is not just a story on a Protean brochure. It drives us.
I would imagine that also you've experienced the opposite, wherein you've had clients who you've saved because they've been previously misdiagnosed, and you were able to pick up on that as well.
Yeah, we've had all kinds of situations. For example, we were doing a pilot study with an insurance company, and they're saying we're not quite sure, is Protean services valuable? So I said, well, let's look at your next 20 patients, and I'll review the pathology on them and see how it's going. So within those 20 patients, so one of the very first patients I saw, this gentleman is being seen, he's getting a liver transplant because he's got liver cancer, and we want, double check everything's okay there. So okay, I'm looking at this patient's biopsy, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this patient doesn't look like they have liver cancer. It actually doesn't look like they have cancer at all. It looks like they have a benign condition of the liver that can sometimes trick a pathologist into thinking it's cancer. So I called the insurance company and said, are you sure? I said, well, yeah, I've got some experts. So Protean, I'm lucky to have a whole team of experts. So I had 3 or 4 liver cancer experts, and so I said, we can digitally send the images to them. And so they had a look at it and said, no, you're right, this patient doesn't have cancer. In fact, they're cured. The lesion was cut out, and they don't need a liver transplant. So we were able to save that patient from having a liver transplant. So that was a big deal for that patient. Saw another patient where they were being treated for lymphoma. They're on chemotherapy. And again, I'm looking at the box and said, something's weird about this. It doesn't really look like a lymphoma. I think it's actually a reactive condition that the pathology lab hadn't done some critical tests. So I ordered the critical test that showed patient didn't have lymphoma, they actually had lupus, and didn't need chemotherapy, and we could take that off as well. Kind of what the focus of Protean is closing the gaps, because I saw, there's all of this wastage, all the data is being thrown that we're not recruiting to trials correctly. We're not using, so we don't even have to invent anything new. We just need to have a system that could pull it together. And the stupid thing is when I was at Moffitt, I was head of the path department, and I couldn't even get the data together for me to put a patient record together, and so the legacy systems don't allow it. So it's one of the barriers in the medical system that it's too expensive to make change. It's like if you buy an old rickety house, sometimes it's better just burn it all down, start from scratch, rather than trying to repair it. And so, pipes are bad, the electrical's bad, the floors are bad, this and that. So sometimes you just have to start from scratch. And it's like putting in cell phones instead of copper wire, that we can leapfrog all and say, today with this empty lab, I can connect every major lab in the world to here. I can connect all the data in the world. I don't need to build a Moffitt, I can use a Moffitt, I can use NIH, and we can make it available to our patients even remotely in Australia. So, and this is the future of medicine. So breaking the walls down, connecting, all those things. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit like the Renaissance, right? Where back in the day, there's the castles on the hill, and you had to go up to the castle and get in. And
Well, regarding the Renaissance,
Yes.
your thought of the Renaissance went in one direction, mine went in another, but both
Yes.
good.
Yes.
The invention of the Gutenberg press
Yes. Yes.
was probably one of the most significant developments
Yes.
of mankind.
Yes.
And I think that the development of the internet
Yes.
is almost as important as the Gutenberg press. However, I think what you've developed, you and your team have developed,
Right.
is something like that,
Yes.
like the Gutenberg press,
Yes.
like the development of the internet. I'm not sure if you quite realize that,
Right.
how important it really is, and what impact it will have on humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're leveraging some key technologies. The internet is one, and medicine hasn't fully capitalized on utilizing the value of the internet, mostly because of fear. So, okay, we got to keep the data secure and
A lot of
isolated.
people fear AI too.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
mostly because of fear that's led to silos. And it's kind of weird. When I first started Protean, I had to, like, someone came and said, we need a fax. It's like, what do we need a fax for? Like, it's like 2019. Like, why do we need a fax? It's like all of these hospitals will only communicate via fax, that it's only a secure form of communication. I said, you're kidding me. No, so we're actually communicating with faxes. And you know how good that is at transmitting data. You can't read it. The data
Can't read it. The
lost.
paper falls underneath the desk.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
you
Run
miss
out of
it.
paper.
Exactly. So it's unbelievable. So there's a confluence of forces. So there's the advances in genomics, the advances in precision medicine, the advances in AI, but also COVID made something, telemedicine, that moved it ahead like 30 years, where we can now do consultations internationally. We put laws around that to make it safe. And cloud-based computing, where now we've got phenomenal computational resources. So even a small company like Protean can create a cloud environment and put in data, and we can spin up 1,000 virtual machines and analyze for a brief period of time that's now economical. So we can create new AI tools that are ours without having to invest in massive computational infrastructure. So, and we put all of that together, and it's the future of medicine. It's very much like the invention of the press, and so on. So we can now talk to doctors in Australia. We can analyze specimens from across the country, and we can integrate and change the practice. And like I said, I believe it's like the Renaissance, where I've talked to patients who have children with cancer. They all had the same story. I took my kid and I got on a plane, and I flew from one medical center to the next medical center to the next around the country. And I couldn't move the data. I couldn't, each one needed to redo everything, and it took a year. Whereas I said, okay, if we could take all that information from your kid, we can now move that information around the country today and have experts around look and say, hey, I could do something for this child today. So that's a way we can speed things up and connect experts. And so I view Protean Maps and Protean as a connector. We connect, we integrate, we synthesize, and we facilitate the next generation in medicine, which is precision medicine. So it's an exciting time.
You happen to mention in what you were saying the word economics, and I'm glad you
Yes.
did, because the reality of this world is that things cost money.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure that you hold fundraising events. I'm sure that you're looking for investors. If people who are watching this are interested in getting involved, what would be the way for them to do that?
Yes, just contact me. We have opportunities to connect, to collaborate, and take on strategic investors that are aligned with our mission and our goals. And if you see something of value here, I'd love to talk to you and explain to you how we can grow this exponentially, economically, and because that's one of the things that people don't realize. We're on a vertical takeoff in science. The amount of knowledge, you said it took 60 years to double our knowledge, and before that was like 200 years. We're doubling our human knowledge like every 28 days or every 14 days. So the amount of knowledge, it's like the momentum is extraordinary. And it's kind of weird in medicine, right? In every other industry, if you look at computers or telecommunication, cost of everything 100 times cheaper. Why is medicine 100 times more expensive? I think we can apply the same economics to medicine, where the cost of drugs will come down, the cost of data will come down, and we will have a much more efficient medical system at a lower cost. And we're on the threshold of that.
These people that want to reach out
Yes.
to get involved, whether it be for volunteering, whether it be as investors, fundraising events,
Yes.
what would be the appropriate way for them to get involved? Would they contact you directly, contact Rocky? Is there a team that deals with this?
No, absolutely. I'd say, first of all, look at our website. I also run a podcast and a channel, a YouTube channel called The Cancer Informant. You can learn about us there. But you could reach out to me or Rocky about all of the opportunities that you can collaborate with Protean, whether you're a patient, whether you're an inventor, whether you're a pharma, whether you're an investor. Come talk to us. So, Rocky, do you have some comments on that?
I do.
Specific email, maybe, phone number?
Boss Don, we'll give you all our emails to post with this presentation, but I even have a bold suggestion for people even to discover more about Dr. Tony and the miraculous things we're doing at Protean, because traditional business sees change as threat. Protean business system equalizes change with opportunity. What Dr. Tony and team are building is to become essentially the Library of Alexandria. We want every therapeutic known to man if it has any utility. So the opportunity here is incredible. And I just have to throw this in. Cancer is just the first pathology that Protean is focused on. Our AI robots, tools, and Dr. Tony and team will be going and providing relief for other human conditions such as Alzheimer's, autoimmune,
metabolic syndrome, infectious
This
diseases.
is only the beginning, Boss Don.
Yeah, because there's only one patient. Like I was fortunate to be taught in the British tradition of medicine, where you have to think about the patient as a single entity. You need to have integrated care. You need to have holistic care. You need to put the patient front and center. First, do no harm. Take care of that patient. So it's very patient-centric. So it's not just an Alzheimer's case or a cancer case, because these people are people, and the information needs to be integrated with them. So it's really, how do you deliver better medicine and better care, and really bring all the amazing advances we have to make it available to doctors everywhere. So that's one of the goals. I was also going to say that when I created Protean, the one constant I knew was change, and the change cycles are going to be faster and faster. So I knew when I had to build a lab, it had to be able to plug and play. It had to be able to be like a Lego. We can snap on a new technology, or we can bring it in. And that's why we chose the name Protean. It's actually after the mythological person, Proteus, exactly, who could adapt, see the future, change shape, and adapt to the future. So that's why we named the company Protean, as that we're a company of change. We embrace change. Change is opportunity. Change is not a threat. And the more change, the better. And that's our energy, comes from change.
We've covered a lot today.
Yes.
And I'm sure that if we wanted to continue, we could produce a book 10 feet thick.
Absolutely.
However, all good things do come to an end.
Yes.
Is there anything perhaps that we haven't spoken about that we should have spoken about today before we close? Either one of you.
Yeah, I think one of the things about Protean is networking and integration and filling gaps and building and really connecting people. And I think Rocky talked about it. It's about data. So Protean might look like a lab. It's actually a data company. It's about bringing the critical data for a patient and making it available to the doctor. And you asked me, have you seen the story with the doctor? And actually I do, because patients come to me directly, and I see the future is where we actually sit on the shoulder of a doctor in their office as a co-pilot, and we become the virtual doctor with a doctor, so that doctor can practice at the top of their game, and they're going to have an expert sitting next to them that's guiding them. Hey, this patient, you need to think about this or that, and that's what Protean will be, the co-pilot. So we will be in the office with the patient, and a doctor and a patient will be like you and me sitting together as to what's right for this patient. What's right for one patient might be different from another, and so we're there to help guide that doctor so they're not practicing in isolation, relying on their own experience. We can empower them with the human knowledge and make them a better doctor and deliver better medicine.
Boss Don, you and I were talking about AI downstairs and the implications about AI and business and human relations. I have a very interesting piece of information to share for our viewers and listeners. Please feel free, should you have questions about the wonderful world that Protean Biodiagnostics is opening up for either clients, patients, researchers. Also, if we have researchers in the audience, please call me. My number's in this notice. We love collaboration. We want to hear your ideas. But what you can actually do, I'll be so bold, and I think Dr. Tony can concur. Ask AI if being a member of Protean is a good idea from any perspective, either investment, collaboration, etc. And one of the we actually feed AI from the standpoint of Dr. Tony and I are so prolific about sharing what we have discovered, and it's our information universe is growing. We are virtually open source. Why? Dr. Tony seeks to heal.
In conclusion, I'm sure both of you have seen the movie Schindler's List. There's a scene where Schindler and Stern were up the entire night typing the list, which became known as Schindler's List, smoking innumerable amounts of cigarettes along the way. And in the very end, Stern holds up the list and he tells Schindler, this is an absolute good. And in my eyes, what the two of you are doing is an absolute good. Thank you so much for giving me the honor, the pleasure of having received me here today and the ability to speak with you about the wonderful things that you've been doing.
No, thank you for those kind words. It was certainly a pleasure hosting you and having you here in our lab to see what we're doing. And really, it's a team effort. So Protean is looking for collaborators and companions and others to really help us further our mission. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you next time on All Business No Bull. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button.